now, and I'll do this. So, hello and welcome to another Zoom meeting and podcast of Here's Tom with the Weather, where we investigate the plethora of higher powers that populate the vast universe of 12-step recovery, where alcoholics riff out on steps 3 and step 11 as prescribed by the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous, who encourage us to find some kind of higher power as long as it's not us. We speak to people with all manner of higher powers, from those who are atheists, Sufis, agnostics, Christians, Jews, Buddhists, followers of Islam, Hermetics, paganists, non-duality. We leave no stone unturned. It's our aim to promote understanding and open-mindedness so that alcoholics and addicts can find a higher power of their own to stay sober and carry the message. We promote tolerance and empathy for folks who might just have different spiritual practices than us. It's all about live and let live. And please remember that this is not an AA meeting. It's just some people's version of the truth, whatever that might be. Sometimes we speak to seekers, to gurus, and people not necessarily in recovery. And today, it's my great honor to introduce you to Neale Donald Walsch. Hello, Neale. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you very much. And thanks for the invitation to be here with you.
Thank you. So I've got a bit of a bio. Now I'm assuming that there is going to be some people who are listening who don't know who you are. So I've got a bit of a bio here, which is a nice short one, but it's pretty good, pretty descriptive. Neale Donald Walsch has written 39 books on contemporary spirituality and its practical application in everyday life. With an early interest in religion and a deeply felt connection to spirituality, Neale spent the majority of his early adult years thriving professionally, yet searching for greater meaning in life. He has said that his yearning led to a series of deeply personal spiritual encounters, which he experienced as direct exchanges with the divine. A series of books titled Conversations with God emerged from those moments and has been translated into 37 languages. 7 books in the series reached the New York Times bestseller list, and Conversations with God, Book 1, has remained there for over 2.5 years. Today, we're going to be talking in a large part about his latest book, The God Solution, which was published in December 2020, which, I quote, invites humanity to embrace a new global ethic based on a refined and clarified definition of God. The book proposes that there is a single statement of spiritual truth upon which all of the world's religions could agree, and which would birth a shift of spiritual paradigms around the globe of such magnitude that it would produce peace and happiness on our planet at last. And I just wanted to say as well, on a personal note, is that when I first came into recovery, into 12-step recovery in 2002, I spent some time in Scotland, and at a meeting there, somehow one of your audio books was for sale, which isn't usually the case at any sort of AA room. They're supposed to sell normal literature or prescribed literature, and yours was there, and I bought it. And it played a huge part in my early years, and it really gave me a great deal of hope. So this is actually quite a big deal for me. So thank you for coming along. And that's enough for me. So I just wanted to talk, just to put everything into context. And for those that don't know, could you tell us a little bit? I think for a lot of people who come into AA, who come into recovery, they always get to a rock bottom before they find some sort of spiritual awakening. And I know, I'm going to let you tell in your own words, is could you just give us a brief overview of what happened to you and how you came to have your conversations with God, please?
Thank you. Yes, I had hit rock bottom in my life for sure. I'm grateful that I did not have a particular addictive abnormality, but boy, everything else that could go wrong in my life had gone wrong. It began with my relationship with my significant other, my relationship with my wife, which had fallen apart, and I couldn't put it back together no matter how hard I tried. So we wound up separating, and I was separate from my children. Then I lost my job at the same time. Within about 2 weeks after that event, I was downsized, as they put it in those days. And I was, the latest hire, so the first one out when they had to downsize the staff. So I lost my job, was out of work. And then on top of that, I had an automobile accident. An elderly gentleman turned in front of me. I was driving very slowly. I'm a slow driver anyway. I was doing about 22 miles an hour, which is not very fast. But this older gentleman nevertheless decided to turn into his driveway and made a turn right in front of my car. I couldn't stop no matter how hard I tried. And so I broke my neck in that automobile accident. It was quite a collision. I snapped my neck, and it wasn't a hairline fracture, as they put it in medical terms. I remember to this day the wording on the medical report because it shocked me. It reported that I had a 3/4 inch avulsion fracture of the 7th cervical vertebrae posteriorly. A 3/4 inch avulsion fracture is large enough to put a pencil through. And so I broke my neck in a big way. And what the doctors told me after, I came to and they kind of fixed me up a little bit. They said, it's really amazing, honestly, that you lived through this. Most people that have that kind of a fracture, especially such a huge one, usually have spinal cord complications that create paralysis, if not death. And I escaped both. I was able to move around a little bit and I was still alive. So they said, wow, we don't know what that's about, but I was in rehab for the next year and a half, just a few weeks shy of a year and a half. I was in rehab. They were just trying to get me to move my neck even this far to the left or to the right at that point. And then they had to, fix my neck, of course, and go through that whole process. So that threw me out of work. I was already out of work, but threw me out of the search for work because everywhere I went, David, to try to apply for a job, they saw me walking in with this therapeutic collar that I was wearing to hold up my head. And because they explained to me that, Neale, picture a basketball on the head of a pin. He said, that's the problem here. You have nothing holding up your head if you do not take this collar off. So I was not allowed to take the collar off, even when I was sleeping, showering, or having any other activity. The collar had to stay on, and I kept it on for almost a year and a half. Well, you don't get many jobs when you walk in with that kind of a device on your body because they see you as a walking insurance claim. One wrong move, and they're going to have to pay for whatever injury you sustained in that motion on the job. So I couldn't get a job anywhere, and I ran out of money, and I wound up living on the sidewalk, David, for a year, 2 weeks shy of 1 year. I wound up living on the street. I didn't have any money at all. I would wake up every day not knowing, how I was going to get through the day, whether I'd get enough money, panhandling on the sidewalk, asking people if they would have a little change they could spare or some folding money that they could spare so that I could eat that day. And I lived that way for a year of my life. That's, David, when I came to the end of, I finally managed to find a little part-time job. And that got me into a little studio apartment behind someone's house. They had a little grandmama studio behind the house, and I managed to rent that. And but I that's when I called out to God at that point. What does it take to make life work? What have I done to deserve a life of such endless, continuing struggle? I mean, somebody tell me the rules. I'll play. I promise I'll play. Just give me the rule book. How does the game go? And so I was really furious because I had a belief in God. I thought there was such a thing called God, but I didn't get that I was being treated very well by God, and I didn't understand, what I didn't know. I thought, okay, there's something here I don't fully understand, the understanding of which would change everything. So I did. I called out to God, and I actually wrote an angry letter, as it happens. I woke up one morning at 2:43 in the morning. I'm sorry, 4:43 in the morning, and I found a yellow legal pad on my coffee table, and I picked it up and I wrote an angry letter to God, in which I asked all those questions. Just give me some insight here, and I began receiving. I thought I heard a voice over my right shoulder, actually, that actually said, "Do you really want answers to all of these questions, or are you just getting it off your chest? Are you just venting?" And I remember thinking at the time, yeah, I'm venting. You're damn right I'm venting. But if you've got answers, I'd sure as hell like to know what they are. And with that, my mind was filled, just like a download, like you would get a download on your computer coming from an unexplained source. Here was this download just hit me. and the answers to the questions I had written down and to questions I didn't even know existed. I mean, answers to everything I could imagine found their way into my mind. And I began, and those answers brought up other questions. And before I knew it, I was involved in a dialogue, question, answer, question, answer, question, answer, on this yellow legal pad. Now, I have to tell you, you'll be sorry you asked for this question, because it's about a 25-minute. It seems like a 25-minute answer. I'm so sorry, but to give you the full story. So there I'm sitting now. I got pages and pages of this dialogue. I never dreamt anyone would ever see this. It was not my intention ever for anyone to ever see it. I considered it kind of okay. So I'm having a private process, a journaling, maybe call it journaling or writing a diary or whatever you want to call it. But because it went on for days, by the way, I should explain that for the next 6 or 8 or 10 days, I'd be awakened at 4:23 in the morning. I keep on mentioning 4:23 because it's important to the story. I was awakened at 4:23 in the morning, more or less, and I went right back to my writing. Questions answer, having as I said, a private personal experience. But then in the middle of this dialogue, I was told, you will make of this one day a book and it will be accessed by many people. And you know what I thought? We'll see about that. Because most of what I was told was theoretical in nature, conceptual, could be, could not be, who would know? But now here was a statement of fact. This was a flat out prediction, a statement. You will make of this a book, which I never dreamt I would do. And it will be accessed by many people, which I couldn't imagine. I mean, even if I did submit it to a publisher, which I did, by the way, on a dare, because I thought, I'm going to dare God. We'll see. There's nobody in the world. Nobody's going to publish this handwritten dialogue with God. I mean, I could just imagine the publisher, going out to the workroom floor and saying to his editors, hold the presses, I got a guy here who's talking to God. It's not going to happen. I knew it wasn't going to happen. So it wasn't a chance in the world. I'm a man of the world. I knew that wasn't going to. So I sent it off to a publisher. By golly, if they didn't publish the book. He said, this is interesting enough. We're going to publish it. It's a fascinating idea. Conversations with God. They published the book. It sold over 1 million copies on its first run. It has since sold over 15 million copies. Been translated into 37 languages. Like, what? I mean, what? And what it turned out, David, is that the questions I was asking were questions that are asked by people all over the world. Every man's questions. And excuse me. And so apparently I struck a nerve. Apparently I, landed on a topic that many people around the world in many different cultures and many different languages, because the conversation translated, as I said, into 37 languages, and everybody got it, no matter what language. And so I realized, okay, something's happened here. Something way bigger than I could have possibly imagined has happened here. And I'm simply taking dictation. I've taken dictation. I've since had the experience continue, of course. The experience didn't stop. My conversations with God have continued all these intervening years. And I want to end my little diatribe here by making a flat statement. The most important thing I was told in conversations with God is, Neale, you're not special. Don't want you to think that you're somehow unusual or out of the ordinary. God talks to everyone all the time. We call it something else because we think we're going to be marginalized. People are going to make fun of us. So we call it, intuition, women's intuition, maybe a stroke of genius, an insight, a sudden insight. Who knows? We try to give it a brilliant idea. We try to give it a name that we can get away with. But God says, I'm talking to everybody all the time. The question is not, to whom does God talk? The question is, who listens? Who's listening? So with that, I continued. Of course, when the book sold the way it did, they called me from New York. Do you have any sisters like that at home? The old story. And so I continued to send them my ongoing dialogue, which I did not stop having. I kept it going. So I sent them more material and more material, out of which grew a 9-book series. That series has now been complete, but it does include 9 books in the Conversations with God series. And it covers everything, honestly: sexuality, right livelihood, health and diet, financial circumstances and situations, abundance, and how to find right livelihood. I mean, it's just parenting. It really covers the waterfront and talks about everything you could imagine that one would want to know about this human life. And the ideas are not mine. They did not. I'm very clear. They did not come from me, but they did come from the source of higher wisdom and greater clarity that resides within all of us. I simply took it down and sent it to a publisher. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thanks for asking the question.
Thank you very much. That was perfect. And I've heard your story several times, and it's always great to hear it. And I just on that, I remember hearing that audio book that I listened to. I think it was the audio version of Conversations with God. And I was on a beach on Stradbroke Island off the coast of Brisbane, and you helped me with a great sense. So I'm very, very grateful for what you've done and how you've changed people's lives. And I just wanted to go back quickly. You said before that you were, I think you've been a spiritual seeker for a while, or you did have a concept of God. What was that concept before you had you started your ongoing conversation?
Well, it was the standard concept, or I want to say the more or less accepted concept adopted by the largest number of people. Surveys show that 8 out of 10 people believe in some kind of controlling power, some kind of higher power. 8 out of 10 people, and these aren't ancient surveys. This survey is taken even in the last 3 years. They take these surveys over and over again in every culture on the planet, and it shows that 80% of the people believe, there's something going on. There's something larger happening. There's a higher power of some sort, but we can't decide what it is. But the major religions have kind of a profile, if you please, that tells us that God loves us. So God is love. But that God's love, if you'll forgive me for putting it this way, is conditional. It's kind of like a quid pro quo. You give me what I need, I'll give you what you need. You give me what I require, I'll give you what you're asking for. But if you don't do what I'm telling you to do, if you don't do what I want you to do, this is God talking to us. If you don't do what I want you to do, you're going to be in trouble. You could be in fact, you could be in big trouble. For instance, if you belong to the wrong religion, if you don't belong to the right religion, I'm going to have to send you to hell. I don't know what to say. Dem's the rules. I'm just going to have to send you to hell because you didn't join the right religion. So this was the God that I held as my idea of the deity, a God who is judgmental, condemning, and punishing. And I see now that human beings have adopted the same behaviors as they imitate the model that's been given to us by the largest number of the world's religions, the model we've been given about our God. God is conditionally loving. It's a quid pro quo. It's a this for that. And if you don't meet God's conditions, God can be judgmental, condemning, and punishing. That's how we are with each other, because that's how we've learned to love. So that was my understanding of God until I had my conversations with God, when I kind of, frankly, bawled God out. I mean, I really gave God hell. So, how in the world what kind of a deity, all-powerful being would act like that and would behave like that, would tell me not to make too much of the point, but I remember when I was 9 years old, I was told this when I was 9 years old. So you can imagine the impression this made on a 9-year-old mind. I was told at the age of 9 that if I didn't maintain my Catholic religion, if I wasn't a Christian, if I happened to be raised in the Jewish tradition or a follower of Islam or a Buddhist or name any one of the world's religions. By the way, incidentally, there are 4,273 religions on the face of the earth. I didn't make that number up. Google it. Check it out. 4,200 religions on the face of the earth. And there's only one that will get you into heaven. All the rest of them, God says.
You were awakened at 4:23 minutes past 4:23. How about that?
Yeah, because that's, I was wondering why always somewhere around 4:23, 4:21, 4 o'clock in the morning, somewhere in there, every time I had one of these conversations or the call to continue the conversation. And then one day I had occasion, because I was traveling, I had to get my passport. So I had to write my home county where I was born for my birth certificate. And the birth certificate came about a week and a half later. Wouldn't you know? Born 4:23 a.m. Of course. And I looked at this piece of paper and I went, of course, there you have it. There you have it. The perfect symmetry of it. But I was told, just to finish 2 more sentences, just to finish my story, at the age of 9, I was told that if in fact you belong to any other religion or no religion at all, you are in fact going to hell. You will burn in the everlasting fires of hell forever and ever. Now, I wasn't 29 or 39 or 49 where I could receive that kind of information, with a mature mind and weigh it and judge it and make my decision about it. I'm 90 years old, and the priest in front of the room is telling me this. Of course, I believed him, naturally. Who doesn't believe an authority figure when you're 9? This guy wearing a white collar, looks like Bing Crosby, going my way. How could I, how the hell could I not believe him?
Yeah.
And so I was, I lived the greater part of my younger years believing in a God who would punish you with everlasting damnation if you didn't do what he wanted us to do. Wow.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of, I think most of us in this room in recovery, well, if it's not us, then we certainly know people in recovery who struggle with the whole concept of God and the whole concept of that judgmental religious stuff in the background. And just on that 42 thing, that's the actual answer to life in A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, if you didn't know. So just there's a bit of synchronicity there. Yeah, and in your new book, The God Solution, which I read this week, and I absolutely loved it. And I found a lot of stuff that was, I think, that people in 12-step recovery will find interesting, because you're part of the program with AA and NA and the 12 steps is we have to create a concept of a higher power of our own understanding, as it says in the steps. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with it, but that's an essential part of recovery, and people who are atheists and agnostics and whoever can find a higher power, and that can be a bunch of drunks. But what struck me is that you are doing step 2 and 3 on a global scale, because in essence you're talking about rebranding God. From that judgmental old man in the clouds, or the judgmental thing.
Yeah, I've suggested to the world, what if there was a solution to the world's problems? I'm not talking about geophysical problems, earthquakes, tornadoes, and things of that nature, but behavioral problems, which are 9/10 of the world's problems created by humanity's behavior with each other. I've never seen a level of alienation on this planet, the likes of which I'm seeing today. If you don't belong to the right nationality, if you don't belong to the right religion, if you don't belong to the right race, if you don't have the right sexual orientation, if you don't have the right gender to begin with, if you don't, whatever it is that makes you different, you're out of here. You are out of here. We want nothing to do with you. And if you don't have the right political point of view, you're not just somebody who disagrees with us, you are the enemy. We've created alienation at a level I've never before seen in my years on this planet. Because this is the model we've used, is the model of a God who is alienated, or who alienates us if we don't do what he demands and asks us to do. Sure. So what I was told in the God Solution was, you know what? Here's the deal. What we need is to completely redefine God. This is a theologically revolutionary idea. It's going to require idea heroes. We need now on the planet what I've described in the book as idea heroes. Galileo was an idea hero. Just to use an example of what I mean by an idea hero. Here's a guy who said, hey, you know what? The earth, I've just discovered, the earth revolves around the sun. How about that? And the Catholic Church, said, no. The sun revolves around the earth. They've taught that for hundreds and hundreds of years. The sun revolves around the earth. The earth is the center of our universe. We are the center of the cosmos, and you've got it wrong. And they excommunicated Galileo, and it took them 352 years. 352 years before the Catholic Church said, actually, Galileo was right. We probably shouldn't have excommunicated him. And after 352 years, they lifted the excommunication, presumably, retracting Galileo from hell because he had been excommunicated by the Pope, no less, and by the Catholic Church. He's one of many. There are others across human history. We could name 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 idea heroes who have suggested something that everyone knew in advance the largest number of people would disagree with. So here's what we need today: idea heroes who are willing to say, you know what? We may have it all wrong about God. We may not have the full story here. And let's redefine God. Let's create a brand new definition of God. And so people say to me, what's the new definition? I can put it in 2 words. What if we decided that God was pure love? Now, David, my audience is often, when I do this in person on the internet or elsewhere, the audiences say, well, of course, we all agree with that. Everyone who wouldn't agree, God is love. Everyone says God is love. No one disagrees on a serious level with that statement. I said, wait a minute. I didn't say God is love. I said God is pure love. There's a difference. What's the difference? People say. The difference is this: pure love needs, expects, requires, and demands nothing in return. Dare we believe in a God who needs nothing from us? It's not a quid pro quo. It's not a my way or the highway God. Dare we believe in a God who says, the moment that we leave our physical body in the experience that some of us call death, can we believe in a God who says, welcome home, welcome home, welcome back, and who equips us to maybe return if we choose to return in a process that we call reincarnation that allows us to live lifetime after lifetime after lifetime for a particular purpose and for a specific reason, and who will not judge us at any point, who actually believes in the words of the man who called himself God's son. And it was he who said, judge not, and ye shall not be judged. Condemn not, and ye shall not be condemned. Judge not, and neither condemn. And raise not your fist to heaven, and curse the darkness not, but be a light unto the darkness, that you might know who you really are, and that all those whose lives you touch will know who they really are as well. Wow. When I got that information, I said to myself, this is the God I knew had to be true. This is the God I knew had to be what God really is. If there's a God at all, this has got to be what it is. It's almost too good to be true. And I even said that in my dialogue to God. I said, you know what? You're too good to be true. And God said to me, sweetheart, if I can't be too good to be true, who can? If God can't be too good to be true, come on, Jackie, that was a good line. You can smile at that. I said, if God can't be too good to be true, who can?
Okay.
So I believe in a God who's probably too good to be true and who would be denied by 9 of the world's major religions. But maybe, just maybe, there's something we don't fully understand here, that we have not fully understood about God and life, the understanding of which would change everything. Now, here's the through line, and then I'm done. The through line is this. If we were to adopt that idea about God, it could form the basis of a new human ethic. Now our politics, now our economies, now our social systems, and yes, now our spiritual systems could be based on a new global ethic, a global ethic that says, hey, you know what? I need, expect, require, and demand nothing from you in return for my being loving, in return for my being good, in return for my being a nice person as far as you're concerned. And that doesn't mean I give you whatever you want. That doesn't mean you get to run all over me and walk all over me. It simply means I will learn how to be civil with you, even if I disagree with you. I don't need to call you names or bully you or insult you because you hold a different political point of view than I do. We've come to a place in our country where we think that insults and bullying is leadership. Excuse me? Excuse me?
Yeah. Yeah. That's every country around the world, isn't it? But yeah, I get what you're
It's
saying.
not every country around the world. The leader of every country around the world isn't doing that. But there are leaders of some countries who decided to, if you disagree with them, I'm going to insult you. I'm going to tell everybody you got big ears. I mean, really? A man running for president decides to insult somebody because they have big ears? I mean, really? Is that what we've sunk to?
Yeah, thank you. So there's all sorts of things in the book that I found a lot of synergy with the program, and I like what you said about pure love. But I know that we've got, like I said, we've got there's people in this room that right across the spectrum of belief, from people who are, who are in conscious contact every day to people who are agnostic and atheist. How does that pure love, do you think, relate to people who perhaps don't have a higher power? How do you think that works for them? Because I know you've mentioned in the past that you speak to a lot of people who don't have a faith or don't have any spirituality. How does that work for them?
Well, they may not have faith, but they do have an understanding that there's a thing called life. Life exists. And so what I say to them is, do you believe in life? I mean, do you see life as a process that's going on? And most people will say, yeah, I don't get the God thing, but of course there's a process called life. It's going on all around me. I go, great. We have a place where we can agree. I'm simply calling that process God. I don't see God as a guy with, white hair, wavy white hair, and a white beard, happens to favor blue shirts and wears glasses and looks suspiciously like either James or me. And I mean, I don't, so I don't, I don't see God as that kind of an entity, an individual person who, by the way, if God was a person, he would have to have a penis. We understand that, couldn't have a vagina. That's pretty clear. God must be a man.
Of course.
Must be a man with small ears.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I get it. So I say to people, do you believe in God? Do you believe in life? Because if you believe in life, then you believe in a process called life. And I'm simply calling that process God. I was told in conversations with God, you know what God said to me? I'm a process. I'm simply a process. I'm a process of energetic transmission, energetic projection. That energy projects from one source to another source. It's received and processed and reprojected out. That's what you'll experience as you look all over the cosmos, a process of energy transfer. And that energy is called love because it has no malevolent intention, nor does it have any need whatsoever. And so I found that when I talk even to atheists, they can say, well, I can accept that life is a process. And I can accept that when that energy comes at me in a certain way, I can feel it. Yeah, I can feel when I'm feeling the experience called love. I can also feel anger. I can feel hatred. I can feel frustration. I feel a lot of things, but I can feel love. And then I say to them, well, love is actually who you are. It's the fundamental basis of who you are. Everything else is stuff that you're making up in your mind based on the energy that's projected toward you from other sources in life, sources who are equally unclear as to who and what they really are. So we come upon that same question. Is it possible? And I ask everybody here today, I'm asking Jackie and Brent and Zubin and Marie and Michael, I ask all of you, is it possible? Just possible that there's something we don't fully understand here about God and about life and about ourselves, the understanding of which would change everything? If your answer is yes, then come along with me and explore the God solution. You don't even have to agree with it, but just have be open-minded enough to explore it, to see maybe this might be an interesting way to experience that aspect of life that people call God.
And that's very close to step 2 in the program for AA, is that perhaps that being open-mindedness or having that willingness to be open-minded restores us to sanity. So that's just fantastic. Like I said, I found so many parallels, and I love what you said. And you sort of, when you get down to where the rubber meets the road in the sort of the latter chapters of the book, you talk about things like gratitude, and that's a big thing in the fellowship. And that's essentially when you talk about the idea heroes and putting that pure love into action. I think that's where you're sort of saying that gratitude, and that you use terms like the home field advantage and things like that as something that when you put that into practice and you start being of service to other people, I think that's what you're saying. And I also like what you said about forgiveness, that you move one step beyond forgiveness. Can you explain that to everyone? Because I found that fascinating.
Well, let me back up just a little bit. I will go there for sure.
Yeah.
Gratitude, I'm told, is the most powerful single energetic projection in the universe. It's just a name we've given. We gave the name gravity to a certain energetic experience in the universe. We call it gravity. Okay. Sure. Well, this is another energy we call gratitude. And gratitude is simply an energetic vibratory frequency, if you please, that feels a certain way. And we happen to call that gratitude. When we allow ourselves to experience and to project gratitude into any encounter in which we are engaged in life, whatever it might be, whether we call it good or not so good, whether we call it welcome or not so welcome, when we project gratitude into everything that's occurring and experience gratitude as our response to all of life's events, we have the ability, and we create the ability, and we actually produce often the outcome of turning around the experience that's coming toward us if it's unwelcome. And that's because gratitude is a very powerful energetic projection. Now, people would say, how can you be grateful for something that's unwelcome? How can you be grateful for the problems that you're having in life? A relationship dissolves, or you lose your job, or the problems that you yourself, Neale, had. How can you be grateful for stuff like that? And the answer is, when I understood that every single event in my life was designed to move me forward, one step forward, in the process of my own evolution, then I see, like the 12-year-old who got the multiplication tables wrong and didn't quite answer the problem right, like the children that we really are on the planet. I see now, I see. And I also see how many of the problems, not all of them, but how many of the problems that I did encounter in my life up to this point might not have been problematical if I simply approached them in a totally different way. So gratitude is a very powerful, powerful emotion. Yes, now about forgiveness. I was told that God doesn't forgive us for anything. God will never forgive us. I love it, by the way, when I give a talk in churches. I'm often invited to go to a church here and there to give a little Sunday morning talk. I'll be doing that again in November down in Los Angeles, giving a talk at a rather large church. And the first thing I say to the congregation is, good morning. I hope you're having a good Sunday. I've come here to share with you the news that God will never forgive you for anything. And the place goes crazy. I mean, the audience goes, they get out of they start leaving the pews. I'm surprised that no one here is leaving. John is still hanging around. Brad is not going to go yet. I noticed that, most of you are staying just at least to hear me out. but they would actually leave the church. And I said, no, wait. You have to understand, God will not forgive you for anything any more than you need to forgive a 3-year-old child who spills the milk all over your Sunday suit when you've come by for the birthday party. You don't say to your 3-year-old granddaughter, what's the matter with you? You should be more careful. You know what you can do. You can go to your room and don't come out of your room for the rest of the summer. I'll teach you. You don't punish the child. You don't even forgive the child. You don't say to a 3-year-old granddaughter, it's okay, honey. Grandpa forgives you. Forgiveness is not part of the equation. Now, why? Why isn't even forgiveness part of the equation? Not only do you not punish the child, not only do you not forgive the child, you actually wrap that 3-year-old granddaughter in your arms and you bring her close to you, even though your suit is soaked with milk. And you bring her close to you and you say, it's okay, sweetheart. Grandpa loves you. It's okay. You know what? Here's the news, guys. God is at least as nice as my grandpa. I promise you. So here's the news. God has no need to forgive us because God understands how we, who are the children of the universe, we are one of the youngest species in the cosmos. This has been made very clear to me. We may be here for a long time, but relative to the age of the universe, in fact, relative to the age of the planet, if you took the age of the Earth, just this planet, forget about the cosmos, just the Earth, and put it on a calendar year,
yes,
the entirety of human experience would fit into the last 60 seconds of that calendar year. Everything else is what it took us to get from the beginning of the Earth to this moment right here, right now. Anthropologists have shown that, by the way, mathematically, that's true. The last 60 seconds of that calendar year would contain all of human history. That's how young we are relative to the size of the Earth. Forget about the age of the cosmos. Now, God, of course, understands that. So understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master. I want you to write that on your bathroom mirror. Everybody, write that on your mirror. Understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master.
lovely.
Dare you believe such an extraordinary truth? Be careful, guys. This stuff could change the world.
And that's what I wanted to talk to you. The next question, before I've got a few questions coming up in chat. So I don't know how much time you can give us today, Neale. But
I only have 4 hours. I told him I could only do no more than 4, maybe 6, 4 to 6 hours.
Okay, well, we'll hang about. We'll measure that out. But one of the things that I find really exciting that you mentioned about is what it takes to become an advanced civilization. And this isn't really to do with recovery in a point, because I do find that for people who aren't familiar with AA, is that it's a fellowship that the currency isn't run by money. The currency is run by service and love. And that's how a bunch of drunks, 4 million drunks around the world, somehow get on. And when I say get on, I do that with inverted commas. But they get on, and this fellowship works. And the currency, because the currency isn't about money and getting ahead, it's about service. And you use the phrase advanced civilization. What does an advanced civilization look like, and how, if it was to be an advanced civilization tomorrow, when we use pure love, how would we live? What would life be like? I'm intrigued, because I'm a kind of an apocalypse lover. Like I like dystopian futures and stuff, but I love the idea of an advanced civilization, and I'm really excited to see how long that would take to happen and what it would be like.
We would first eliminate the idea of separation. The very first thing we would do is take the notion of separation and toss it out of our cosmology. It would have nothing to do with us. We have believed in separation for a very long time. Our belief in separation has been created because we've bought into a separation theology. A separation theology is a theology that says God's up there and we're down here, and never the twain shall meet, except perhaps on Judgment Day. Mm-hmm. But that's it. God's up there and we're down here. Now, that's okay. If that's where as far as it went, we could live with that. It's, I mean, you get to believe what you want to believe. But the problem is it doesn't stop there, because a separation theology creates a separation cosmology. That is a cosmological holding that says that everything is separate from everything else. And you know what? We could even live with that if we had to. But that's not the beginning and the end of it. Because the separation cosmology incredibly produces a separation psychology. Yes, psychological holding that each of us is all by ourselves. We're alone. You're over there. I see you're over there, and I'm over here. But you're you, and I'm me, and we're separate from each other. We long to be close together. We try to form partnerships and romantic relationships and liaisons, and we try to. But at its basis, in the end, we're living our lives by ourselves. I'm separate from you, and you're separate from me. And you know what? We could almost get away with that if it began and ended there, but it doesn't. Because a separation psychology inevitably produces a separation sociology. Entire societies that form individual groups that declare themselves to be separate from each other. Democrats and Republicans, gays and straights, conservatives and liberals, nationals and not people who don't belong to our nation. Men and women, whatever, separate groups and separate religions, of course, as I said, 4,000 religions, organized religions on the face of the earth right now. And you know what? We could almost get away with it if it began and ended there, but it doesn't. Because a separation sociology inevitably produces a separation pathology. Pathological behaviors of self-destruction, observable on the earth throughout human history. So we see that our separation theology has produced a separation cosmology, which has generated a separation psychology, which has produced a separation sociology, which has resulted in a separation pathology. I'm me, you're you, and you either do it my way or you'll pay for it, I promise. You with the big ears.
Okay.
And I'll find every insult I can throw at you. I'll demean you. I'll belittle you. Just because you have an idea that's different from mine, I will insult you, and I will call my insults leadership. This is called leadership. That's the trump card we'll play in this game, called leadership. So in an advanced civilization, we would eliminate the idea of separation. We would decide that, oh, I got it. We are all one. You and I are connected. I mean, deeply connected. We are all simply individuations of the self-same energetic projection. We are all one. And the second thing we would discover in an advanced civilization is that there's enough. 2 words that could change everything. There's enough. There's enough time. There's enough money. There's enough power. There's enough food on this planet. Let me share something. Are you aware, folks? Brent, do you know this? Did you know this? Did Brent leave already? Oh, Brent may have gone.
Ask Ian. He's just come back from Snowdonia. He needs a question to wake him up. Sorry.
Yeah, I guess Brent had enough of me. He left. He said, I'm done with this guy.
No.
But did you guys know that 653 children die of starvation on this planet every week? No, I'm sorry. I got that statistic wrong. I meant to say every day. No, I'm sorry. I got that statistic wrong. I meant to say every hour. I said 653 children die on this planet every hour of starvation because we can't find a way to get them food while we throw away more food in the restaurants of Los Angeles, Tokyo, and Paris every night than would be needed to feed an entire village for a week. Are you kidding me? And we call ourselves an advanced civilization? Now, of course, you ask what would an advanced civilization be like? I promise you, 650 kids wouldn't be dying every hour of starvation. I promise you. Because we would get clear that there's enough. There's enough money. There's enough food. There's enough power to go around. There's enough of all we think we need to be totally happy. All we have to do is, God forbid, find a way to share. Wow. What an advanced notion. So in an advanced civilization, we would be clear that we are all one and that there's enough. And we would probably adopt what I have been told is the single most important message in my conversations with God. My whole life changed when I heard this message. I asked God, what does it take to make life work? I don't understand. What does it take to make life work? And she said, Neale, it's so simple. You think your life is about you. And your life has nothing to do with you. It's about everyone whose life you touch and the way in which you touch it. But the way in which you touch the lives you touch will have a direct impact on you. Because what goes around comes around for a very simple reason. Guess what? There's only one of us. I could, of course, be wrong about all of this.
Thank you very much. So we've got a few questions here. I just wanted to, there's a statement here from a good friend of mine, Christine in Tenerife, says, my life was turned around after I came across and spent a complete weekend listening to and absorbing the Heart of Truth seminar recording. How would your life be different if questions you asked to be considered were life-changing for me? I looked at them. The only one I still can't process is that no one does anything they don't want to do. Can you explain that a bit more, please?
Yes, of course. No one does anything they don't want to do. Everything, I'm not saying no one is sometimes forced to do things. I'm saying that no one willfully does anything they don't want to do. And that statement is incontrovertible. It's absolutely true. I like to use the example because a few years ago, I remember this so vividly. my wife said to me one night, this is many years ago now, but she said, you know, good news. I have tickets to the opera. My friend at work, gave me some tickets to the opera because she couldn't use them because her husband's too sick. So we have 2 tickets to the 3rd row at the opera tonight. I said, oh, honey, tonight's the big game. You know that. I've been talking about it for the past week. Tonight's the big game. I don't want to miss the big game. She said, sweetheart, you don't understand. These are like $120 tickets. We got 2 tickets to the opera. Come on. You can miss the game. You've seen the game 1,000 times. I said, sweetheart, come on. It's the big game. Don't do this to me. You go to the opera. She said, look, you don't have to go to the opera if you don't want to. What room will you be sleeping in tonight? I said, well, if when you put it that way. And suddenly my priorities got very clear. And I went to the opera. And I went to the opera and I met a friend of mine I went to the opera, and in the lobby during intermission, he said, "Hey, I didn't expect to see you here. I thought you hated opera." I said, "Well, I don't really enjoy it a whole lot, but I said, to be honest with you, between you and me, I didn't really want to come, but my wife talked me into it." And he looked at me and he said, "Of course you wanted to come. Why are you trying to play the hero and the victim of your own story? I won't let you be the hero and the victim. You can be the hero and you can be the victim, but you can't be both." Of course you came to it because you wanted to. You made it an adult decision. You made the choice that you thought would bring you the most benefit. And here you are at the opera. Stop telling yourself you came here because you didn't want to. You came here because you did want to. And he looked at me square in the face and he said, "As a matter of fact, everything you've ever willfully done, you've done because you wanted to. You've simply told yourself that some of them you didn't want to do. That way you could be the hero and the victim of your own story." Wow. I said, "Why don't you tell me how you really feel?" Now, the free thinkers know exactly what I'm talking about. And so you'll understand, so does Mary, and so does Barbara, and so does Sean. You all understand perfectly well. So does Brad and David and Kirsten and Mark and Brent and Michael and Vanessa. You all understand. No one does anything they don't want to do. They just sometimes say that they did something they didn't want to do. Then they can feel bad about doing exactly what they wanted to do because they weighed all of the benefits and they made their choice. It's really quite simple.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Christine. It's great to see you, Christine. This is a good question. This is from Mark in Manchester in England, and it's quite pertinent and topical at the moment. Are we alone in the universe? Easy one for you.
No, of course not. No, I mean, and Mark already knows the answer. I see Mark there nodding his head. He's already clear. No, of course not. There is intelligent life in the universe. Maybe not on this planet, but there is intelligent life in the universe. and there's no question that there are actually billions of planets in the universe, and it would be astronomically, mathematically impossible for some form of intelligent life not to exist somewhere else in the universe. So it's undeniably true, and everybody who's looked at it, including the world's greatest scientists, Einstein and all the rest, have all concluded, of course, there is intelligent life elsewhere in the cosmos, and we're not alone. We're not alone in the cosmos. I wish I could talk to people. I wish I could talk to back and forth live in real time. You can't bring anybody on.
We can hang around after. We'll probably have some people afterwards if you want to hang around when we finish recording. I'm sure they'd love to speak to you. They get a bit unruly though, so we'll have to.
I know. John's looking at his watch already. He's like, "How long do I have to endure this guy?"
I know. John can't wait. I'm telling you. Free thinkers. Oh, this is Jeb, I think. Jeb asks, "Is gratitude a radical acceptance of what is and what is real?"
Yes, it is. It is radical. Because it causes it asks us to deny our previous thought about a thing, our previous thought about a circumstance, a situation, or an event. It asks us to deny everything we think we know on that subject. And that's radical. But it requires, again, idea heroism. We have to say, yeah, I'm going to deny what I think I know about this. Let me give you an example. I've given a lot of lectures in the past 25 years. I've lectured, not bragging, just saying, I've lectured around the world in all the world's major cities. And I've asked the same question wherever I lecture. I say to my audiences, have any of you ever experienced what you thought at the time was one of the worst things that could happen to you? My God, I can't believe this is happening to me. Only to experience 3 weeks or 3 months or 3 years later that it was one of the best things that ever happened to you. How many of you have had that experience? Please raise your hand. And in the audience, I promise you, 98% of the hands go up. Now, the master is the one who knows that ahead of time. That's called being a free thinker. Is it radical? You bet it's radical. But is it phenomenally effective in changing your experience of the world? Yes, it is.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Ruth D has a question. What are your thoughts about Jesus and the belief that he died for our sins?
I believe that Jesus was a human being who declared himself to be the Son of God. And I believe that he continues to be, because he never died, nor has anyone else ever died. See, death is not part of the experience of the human soul. So I believe that Jesus was and is the Son of God, even as we all are, sons and daughters of the Most High. I don't believe that Jesus was different or other than us. And interestingly, when you look at what he said, he tried to get us to be real clear about that. He would say things like, "Why are you so amazed? These things and more shall you do also." He would say things like, "I and the Father are one, and we are brothers." Well, what is that? That makes us, oh, I get it. So we're all an aspect of divinity. So do I believe that Jesus died for our sins? I believe that it was not necessary in God's pure love theology to somehow sacrifice a person so the rest of us could be freed from the burden of the sins of humanity. What I was taught when I was, here we go again, 7 years old. Now, 7 years old is called the age of reason in the Catholic Church. It's called the age of reason. At the age of reason, at the age of 7, I was told that I was born in original sin, that I was a sinner at birth, and but I have nothing to worry about because God allowed Jesus to die on the cross to save me from the sin that I was born into as a tiny, innocent baby. But all I have to do is believe in the salvation that Jesus has extended to us. Now, again, not to overdo the point, but to make it clear, if I happen to be from the Islamic tradition or the Jewish tradition or the Buddhist tradition or any one of the 4,000 other traditions, and if I don't happen to necessarily accept the particular notion that Jesus was required to die in order to save me from my birthing sin, the sin that I was born into as a baby, if I don't happen to buy into that, then I'm going straight to hell. I was told this at the age of 7. So I don't think that that's what Jesus intended. What are my thoughts about Jesus? I think Jesus was a demonstration of pure love, as have been many others who have walked the face of the earth. Mother Teresa, to cite a simple example. Mother Mary, for that matter, the mother of Jesus, and many human beings, male and female, through the centuries, have found a place of pure love within them that they called forth and demonstrated in virtually everything that they think and say and do. And that saves us. When we see a person like that, whether it's the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, or Muhammad, bless his holy name, or Moses or Jesus or Mother Mary or Mother Teresa, or the men and women throughout human history who have shown us the way, when we run across or hear about people like that, we are saved from our smallest thought about ourselves. So they are all the Savior. Now the question for this day is, who will you save from the smallest thought they ever had about themselves? Whose life will change forever because you walked through it, sending them the message of who they are, demonstrating to them who they are. returning them to themselves. Who today will you save? Let that be our question for the day.
Wonderful. Thank you. Now, before I go to, we've got one of our co-panelists here, Lebowski's got a question. We're into the sort of last 10, 15 minutes. So if there's any more questions, you can put them in chat and I'll direct them to you. But just to say, there's a bit of a commercial break. This is a free podcast. It's a free for everyone to watch. But we do want to keep the Zoom room open. So if you've got any spare cash falling down the back of your sofa, we could send it by PayPal to gillwriter@hotmail.co.uk just to keep the Zoom room open. It's non-profit. It's just that we, as I say, we like to do the live and let live and open each other's minds to the possibility of different people's ideas about faith. So yeah, if you could do that, that'd be awesome. With that, over to the big Lebowski.
Thanks.
Well, looks like God. He looks like God. I mean, look at him.
He thinks he is. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Neale, and David. And the fact is, I've been reading the question I've been trying to formulate, and it's so damn confusing to me. I'm gonna hardly try to ask it, but the fact is, I was familiar with the titles of your book, but somehow when they were being presented to me, I wasn't really open-minded to the spiritual stuff, but I could identify with everything you've said along the way. And since getting into recovery over a decade ago, I went on a search and then encountered your work along with others. And last week we had a guy on here that was talking about A Course in Miracles, and I read some of the stuff surrounding that, which is talks about that very thing that you put so eloquently, that we're that we're literally connected through the same consciousness and the same source. But the most of the stuff I've encountered since I've tried to have a deeper understanding of a higher power, if you want to put it that way, suggests that so within, as within, so without. In other words, I need to transform my inner sense of self in order to see a different expression of the world outside. And that attacking the problems of the world outside is sort of getting involved in the problems, which are really just an expression, an after effect of what's already going on inside, what's going on in the internal world. And that I can easily, drop within my essence anytime I want and be in touch with that same, higher power that you're talking about, being in dialogue with. And so I guess to funnel into some kind of question, it would be, isn't the solution to the problems of the world of form that we see outside of us the inner transformation we need to make as sort of self actualized or self driven by source entities? I don't know how to put it, particular versions of each other, if you will. I guess that's my question. Isn't it more of an inner job than an outer job?
Yes, of course it is, James. It is an inner job, but it requires idea heroes, because you will find, at least I have found, that when you do that inner work, it begins to show itself in your outer expression. It begins to demonstrate itself in the things that you think, which, by the way, shows on your face. Your face is a map of your thoughts. It begins to show itself in the things that you say, in the ways that you speak, in the words that you share. It begins definitely to show itself in the activities, the actions that you undertake, and the decisions that you make as well. So you will find, at least I have found, that as soon as you begin to embark on that inner work, much less should you come to completion of that inner work and really feel that you've reached, at least reached for a level of higher and higher spiritual mastery, you will find that people will start to ask you, what's going on with you? You're so different. You act different. You even talk different. You even look a little bit different. You look more peaceful. You look more serene, but you look kind of like otherworldly. What's going on? And people will come to you spontaneously, especially if you're in groups, and they will ask you, and some of them won't even be happy about it, James. They'll even look at you and they might say something like, by whose authority are you acting like this? Or as some others might say, who the hell do you think you are? So what will happen is the inside job becomes an outward impact. It creates an outward impact. And when enough people accomplish and begin to embark on that inside work, they begin to change the world outside of them. That's been the impact of every spiritual master who's walked the planet. Whether we're talking about Jesus or Muhammad, bless his holy name, whether we're talking about Moses, whether we're talking about Mother Mary or Eleanor, Bingham, Elizabeth, whether we're talking about Mother Teresa or Siddhartha Gautama, who is called the Buddha. It doesn't matter who you're talking about. They all started with inside work, James, but their inside work began to show itself so profoundly in their exterior expression that they touched the lives of thousands and thousands, and maybe even millions of people. James, I'm not one of them. I'm not at a level of mastery, as anyone who knows me will tell you. But if someone had said to me 25 years ago, Neale, you don't understand. You don't understand. Your words are going to be read by millions of people in 37 languages. Get it. This is an inside job with enormous outside implications.
Thank you very much. Cheers, James. Good to see you. You didn't mention paradigm once. Congratulations, mate. That was awesome. Hey, couple of quick questions. Now, is it okay, Neale, if when we finish recording, are you going to hang around and answer a few questions to folks? Would that
I
be
will
okay?
hang around and answer questions, and
That's
as
brilliant.
long as
Okay,
they
so
keep coming in. I only have 5 hours.
okay, there's quite a lot of questions coming in here, and we haven't got that long for the podcast. So there is actually one good question I wanted to ask you here, and I think it's from Christine again. And Christine asks and I think it's along the lines of that you've said several times that no one does anything they want to do.
No, I said no one, and I said no one does anything they don't want to do.
No one does anything they don't want to do. Okay. What about the people who are forced into slavery and prostitution?
I didn't say no one is forced to do something they don't want to do. I said no one does anything they don't want to do, meaning, of course, as I mentioned earlier, maybe you missed it when I said earlier, willfully undertaking a course of action or a decision. Obviously, if you're walking down the street and a piano hits you on the head because some guy's, moving the piano to his balcony and it falls over the balcony railing, and you don't want to get hit by the piano, nor do you want to be forced by people to do things that they want you to do that you don't want to do. So no one has ever made the statement that no one is ever forced to do things they don't want to do. The statement is no one does anything they don't want to do, meaning, of course, and it's explained in the dialogue. The statement isn't just, we can pull any single sentence out of the Bible, out of the Quran, out of the Bhagavad Gita, out of the Book of Mormon. You can pull any single sentence out of context and start to pull it apart and show everybody that it doesn't make sense. But when you take the sentence in context, it's explained very clearly in the Conversations with God dialogue that no one does anything they don't want to do is understood to mean that no one willfully undertakes a particular course of action or makes a decision or makes a choice that they don't want to do or make because they simply made a value judgment. What are the outcomes? What is the outcome if I do this or if I don't do this? What is the outcome if I do that or if I don't do that? And we make those decisions routinely every day. I used a perfect example about going to the, I can't even say the word.
I'm feeling your pain, mate. I am, seriously. Okay. There's a question that Sherry's asked, which takes me back. We've had a guest on here who's in recovery called Father Bill W, which is a great name, obviously, and he's subscribes to something called two-way prayer. And I don't know whether you're familiar with it, but back in the early days of AA, it was very big in the Akron chapter, I believe, and the Oxford group, etc. I think. Um, I might have those details wrong, but he's very much about doing journaling first thing in the morning. You ask a question, you receive the answer, and you do it first thing in the morning, and obviously not at 4:23, I don't think, but more at a more civilized hour. But the question that I put to him, and I'm interested, and Sherry asked this question as well, is how do you discern the voice of God and the voice of the ego?
Number one, they're sometimes the same. But number two, the voice of God. I was asked, by the way, that question is in the first 10 pages
Sure.
of the 3,000-page Conversations with God dialogue. The Conversations with God dialogue covers actually more than 3,000 pages, almost 4,000 pages. But in the first 10 pages of those 3,000 pages, I asked the same question. How do I know it's you? How do I know it's just not me talking to me? How do I know? And God gave me the answer right then and there. She said, Neale, my voice speaks always of freedom, joy, and love. Freedom, joy, and love. It's just, and it might add fearlessness. So if you're speaking words of freedom, joy, love, and fearlessness, you can be sure that that inspiration came from the source of divine wisdom that resides within all of us. You are calling forth the wisdom that resides within you. And that's how I know. Now, how do I know it's not my own? As I said earlier, well, it's almost too good to be true. Because my own voice wants the best for me and thinks, the best of me. For instance, just to use a silly example, am I a nice person? God, am I a nice person? And God says in the dialogue, you're a wonderful person. You're a very sweet, loving, gentle, caring person. You're a wonderful person. Now, is that my ego talking? Or is that God? So I asked God, well, how can I believe that? And he said, oh, sweetheart, if you saw you the way I see you, you would smile a lot. So I came to understand that it is both. That, our best thoughts about ourselves and our best thoughts about life are the thoughts that come to us from the source within us that I call divine wisdom and divine clarity. If God's thoughts can't be too good to be true, who can?
Sure. So two more questions from me before we end the recorded version. What is consciousness? What is this actual? What is that God? What do you understand as consciousness? The fact that we are aware of being aware. What is that?
Consciousness is the state of us that is neither strictly physical nor strictly metaphysical, or if you please, spiritual, but in fact both at once. It is the, if I could put it metaphorically,
Sure.
the river that runs beneath the bridge that crosses from physical to spiritual. So we cross the river. On one side we're physical. We cross the bridge to the spiritual side, but under the bridge runs the river. And so it is that which is both physical and metaphysical simultaneously. It is the aspect of our essence that I want to say exists in both worlds at the same time. And that is consciousness. Sometimes our mind, which is strictly physical, has a difficult time accessing the level of consciousness that holds larger truths and an awareness of greater realities. So the book, When Everything Changes, Change Everything, tells us how we can cross that bridge, how we can go from one side to the other and experience the highest level of consciousness. And it tells us in that book, again, the title of that book is When Everything Changes, Change Everything. In other words, change everything you believe about yourself, about life, and about God. And when you change all those beliefs, you will enter into a state of being. And that's the bridge between the physical and the metaphysical, between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is held in the mind, wisdom is held in the soul, in my understanding. And consciousness is that aspect of life which bridges the two. It's both physical and non-physical. Beingness is the way to get from your mind to your soul so that you can expand your consciousness to include all the wisdom that is held in the soul. And by beingness, I mean, it's a word that I use to describe a state in which we choose to reside. I am being happy. I am being secure. I am being angry. I am being frustrated. I'm being annoyed. I'm being whatever it is I'm being. Most people don't understand that states of being, what I call beingness, states of being are chosen. They're not things that we have to embrace or that we fall into through no fault of our own. Most people are not clear that states of being are chosen quite deliberately at a mental level that some people think I had no choice. Yeah, I'm being sad, I'm being upset, I'm being angry, I'm being very negative right now. But masters are those who decide ahead of time how they want to be, and they step into that place. Or as Shakespeare put it quite profoundly, I thought, to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to rise up against a sea of troubles, and by opposing to end. And as Shakespeare himself also wrote, there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy.
He must have been an alien, that guy, Shakespeare. I'm telling you, amazing. It's wonderful. Final question for me is what we say to all our guests. And just before I do, I just wanted to say thank you so much. And just to reiterate to everyone that Neale's book is The God Solution. You can Google it and get it. I've read it this week, and I haven't read any of Neale's literature in a couple of years, so it was really good to go back and touch base with it. And I thoroughly recommend it. So please go back there and give it a go. As I say, I highly recommend it. It's very close to AA stuff. For me, it was. But that's only my opinion. So final question for you, Neale. And this is one we always ask. Now, you've decided you've had enough of having conversations with God. You want to go off and do your own thing. You're not going to write any books. So you've got all your money, and you've decided to buy a super yacht. So you get all the family, all the kids, all the grandkids. You put it on the super yacht, 5 stories high, bigger than the Titanic, a lot more secure, you hope. It's got and you get all your worldly possessions, include all your favorite books and everything. You shove them on this super yacht, and you set sail. And you're going down the south, somewhere down the South Pacific, and off the coast of Fiji, you run aground. You run aground on a hidden reef, and this is bad. And it cuts a huge gash in the side of the ship. It sinks really rapidly. So you throw all your relatives overboard. They paddle to a nearby deserted island, and all you've got time to do is grab a plastic bag. You run into your study. You find your favorite book, throw your book in the bag, jump overboard, and hightail it onto the beach where you join your family. And all you've got to do to await rescue is eat a few coconuts and read your favorite book. What's the book? Who's it by? And why?
The book is called The God Solution. It's by Neale Donald Walsch.
Oh, yeah.
And why I chose that book is because it's very clear to me. It's the message I have been waiting for all of my life. It's the message that I have been yearning to be given all of my life. And I don't need to look anywhere outside of myself for someone else's wisdom, nor do any of you.
Thank you very much. Great answer, as I said. So we'll be back next week, and that's the next week's is the final episode for this series, and we're going to have a couple of months off, and we'll be back in September. The one more episode after this week. Neale, thanks again, once again, and I'm going to stop recording now.